Namaste, Sat Shri Akal, and welcome to Dharma Explorers. Dharma Explorers is a series of conversations with prominent personalities who are strong supporters of Sanatan Dharma but were not born in Hindu household. I'm your host, Jai Bansal, along with my co-host, Richa Gautamji. I am affiliated with the Vishwa Hindu Parishad of America, where I serve as the Vice President of Education. Richa ji is the founder of Caste Files and is working with human and civil rights organizations. Uh, Today, it is my distinct honor to welcome our guest speaker today, Esther Dhanraj ji, the Director of Community Outreach at the Hindu University of America. A very warm welcome to you, Esther ji.
Namaste, Jaiji. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. Although this platform is for those who are not born in a Hindu household, we are actually breaking the mold today because Esther ji was actually born in a Hindu household, and she had a very interesting life story, a journey through Christian faith for a number of years, and now returned to Sanatan Dharma, and a very strong supporter and proponent and advocate for Sanatan Dharma values. So, Esther ji, I'm going to introduce you, give a little bit of your background to our viewers, and then we'll get into the conversation. So, Esther ji is also known as Kamakshi. She's a staunch upholder of Sanatana Dharma with a master's degree in English literature from Osmania University, Bharat, and a research-focused master's degree in Christian studies, specializing in apologetics from Luther Rice University in Georgia. She has delved deeply into Christian doctrines and practices. Initially a devout follower of dogmatic teachings, Esther liberated herself from superstitions by subjecting her faith to academic scrutiny. Recognizing the importance of academic inquiry in religious understandings and practices, she now focuses on raising awareness about it. Esther actively supports grassroots initiatives aimed at educating rural communities about Sanatana Dharma and mentors leadership teams of various organizations involved in similar efforts. As the Director of Community Outreach at the Hindu University of America, she brings her rich experience working with volunteer groups, leveraging her rhetorical abilities for mobilizing funds for dharmic causes, and her academic expertise in religious research and writing to advance her mission. So, Esther ji, once again, welcome to you. And you obviously have a very interesting life story. Why don't you tell us about your growing up years, what the family environment was like, and what some of the influences in your life were that shaped your worldview, and of course, how you got into Christian faith and all the journey that and twists and turns that too. So, floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Jaiji. Thank you so much for inviting me to the talk, and a namaskar to your viewers. So it's a joy always to talk about my journey because I look back at it not with regret to begin with, but as a life experience that only a few can have, right? To talk about my growing up years, we were an urban but very conservative Hindu family. And I lived with my parents, my 4 siblings, a cousin who my parents adopted, my maternal grandmother, and our dogs. So it was a huge family. The reason I'm just telling all of these is it was a huge family that lived together. So my father was a Gayatri Upasak and my mother was in different vratams every day of the week. I grew up watching my grandmother perform her Sandhya Vandanam, and I vividly remember her teaching us the Surya Namaskara mantra. And it was ingrained in me so deeply that when I became a Christian and a fanatic one, uh, I used to beat myself to not utter it in my mind, even in my subconscious memory, because it's forbidden. You should not utter mantras because they are demonic. So that was the kind of upbringing. Our puja mandir was complete with a large the Vyasa Peetham, and over which was kept an ancient Bhagavatam. My father performed Rudrabhishekam every Shivratri. Our home always smelled of camphor and samrani. Agnihotram was performed many times in a year. My grandmother practiced Ayurveda. So it was very, very Hindu-like. For us, medicines were homemade Ayurvedic concoctions, herbal concoctions, even ointments and lotions. So never went to a doctor, never had to, because everything was taken care of by my grandmother. And she was the one who helped us perform pujas during festivals, and we celebrated festivals with a lot of pomp. Festivals for us were new clothes, lavish food, these magnificent deities, adorning them, decorating them the night before and performing the puja. Other than that, I must say, Hinduism was limited. We had a very limited understanding of what Hinduism was, besides just festivals and rituals. And festivals like home Diwali went on for days after the actual festival day. So there wasn't much instruction in terms of Hindu philosophy, or neither was there any ingraining of a general sense of pride of being a Hindu. So that is the environment at home, very briefly. Now, I was about 13 when my family was first introduced to Christianity. It was a slow transition for my parents also, as it was for my siblings and I. After experiencing that much of sumptuousness through my childhood, my family was suddenly thrown into a rough patch in life. Everybody goes through that. Some survive, some don't. My family did not survive the attack. I mean, they did not survive Hinduism. They could not stay Hindus at that point. So my mother fell. What happened is, if I look back, is a very trivial issue, very, very trivial. Doesn't warrant conversion. So my mother fell slightly. I would say slightly ill, because back then it was big, but now with advancement of medical field and all that, it's a minor. Back then also it was a minor surgery, not a major surgery. And around the same time, my father lost his very well-paying job. So he quit his job for reasons I can't comprehend. At least at that age, I could. So we were living in Odisha at that time, and we had a Christian neighbor who got a whiff of our situation. And he convinced my parents that the reason our comforts were taken away was because the Christian God has chosen our family to be saved. So that's how my parents' journey into Christianity began. So soon after my mother's surgery in Hyderabad, my family moved from Odisha to Hyderabad. And as you know, Christianity had almost devoured this part of South compared to Odisha. Hyderabad and, especially Andhra, Hyderabad, Telangana. So this part was completely invaded, I would say, by the Christian conversion cabal. So there were several churches all around our aunt's place. That's where we first moved in. So the moment these congregations saw that there was this vulnerable, large family that they could pray on, they began visiting us. Irony is, Jaiji, the aunt where we first moved to Hyderabad remained Hindu. And aunt passed away, but her children are very, very devout Hindus. But we who went to visit, stay with them for a few days before we moved out into a setup of our own, the pastors got us. So my aunt, as all Hindus, was very tolerant and respectful of other people, and the pastors would come in, pray for them, pray with them, share a meal. All this was happening with my aunt, and into this atmosphere when my family went, and these visitors saw that this family was vulnerable and they could prey on, they started employing their tactics. So they would conduct prayer meetings for our family, especially every weekly prayer meeting. Now, the neighbor from Odisha, somehow with his family started visiting us in Hyderabad. Look at their determination. He was just a middle class person. He was an engineer in telco. So, but he would pay out of his pocket and make those visits with his family to spend time with my family. Because he wanted us, right? He wanted us in his fishing net, basically. That's what I call them. So this is how my exposure to Christianity began, or this is how Christianity came into first my parents' life and then into my life.
So here we have you're living in Hyderabad or visiting Hyderabad, and the local church people are visiting and praying you and for you, and you have your neighbor from Odisha visiting with you. So there is a network going on here, right?
Totally.
So it's a total network that is working on you, your family, to bring you into their fold.
Right. I want to add to that. The person in Odisha and this church in Hyderabad, it was actually a church and church pastor. But the one in Odisha was not a pastor. He is not a career evangelist. He's just a lay evangelist. So these are two different kinds of evangelists. But look at their network. They didn't meet each other before they met our family. So together, there was an unsaid, now looking back at it, so there was a kind of untold, unwritten, unsaid arrangement between them. A kind of contract, you visit every week, we'll visit once in 2 months or 3 months, and then we both will work together to get this family into the trap.
Okay, so, you described your family as a devout Hindus. You were practicing various rituals. You had mandir at home, puja is going on, festivals are going on. Yes, you had some misfortunes, but you became vulnerable to the tactics of the conversion machinery. I'm wondering if there was something at the deeper level where you or your family was not particularly invested in Hindu Dharma, or there was some doubts about Hindu Dharma. Is that possible, or something else?
Me having doubts?
Yeah. Your parents having doubts about their belief system, their dharma, or was it simply the fact that here you were in a difficult situation, financially, perhaps, physically, your mother was not well, and that just exposed you to their tactics? And
yeah, so it was more like how Hindus were, at least now they're slowly waking up to the realities in their neighborhood. But this is early 80s. I'm talking about early 80s. So Hindus were welcoming. Like my aunt, she never told the pastors not to come pray for them, or visit. Every time a pastor visits a family in the local neighborhood where his church is situated, he would, even if it is a Hindu home, he would always leave after saying a prayer or reading a verse from the Bible and taking his 2 minutes of, giving 2 minutes sermon to the family. My aunt and her family never objected to such visits and such approaches by the pastors. Now, what does that tell you? That tells you that Hindus are generally respectful of everybody. So they feel that just because a pastor comes into their house and prays for them, it doesn't take anything away from their own Hindu devotion, their own Hindu faith. That's exactly what my parents did. So they never thought that conversion to Christianity was a big deal. So they didn't know. They just thought that it is just the replacement of a deity. We have so many deities in the puja mandir. Cross is just another addition to the mandir. So I would say this was by and large the middle class urban Hindu mindset or understanding of Christianity. My parents were just there. So despite all these rituals and the strong roots into their festivals, their belief system, they thought it was just an addition to their faith. It came as a shock, I would say, to my father when he was told that now he can no more worship his deities.
I see.
His devatas. And also, my grandmother stayed Hindu till she passed away.
I see.
Which was almost, I would say, 8 years after the conversion of my parents.
I see.
And to her dying day, my father was very particular that her puja mandir stayed intact. So there were two religions being followed in the same house, which is very rare. So my father put his foot down, telling the pastors that they had no right to object to my grandmother's beliefs, and the puja mandir will stay for as long as she is alive. And it stayed.
It's so interesting to listen to you, Esther ji. I think compared to an average Hindu household, I think yours was definitely a very, much seeped into Hinduism. When you talk about Agnihotra and all that, puja happening in your house, it is, I think, not as common in, average Hindu households these days. So I think what I wanted to understand, and you've already given some insights into it, the seduction process, the process in which the conversion happened. So, even the fact that a person from Orissa is coming into Hyderabad, are they of the same denomination or they don't care about that? And also, what were the changes that happened in the house?
So it was, as I said, a very, very slow and smooth, I would say, transition. The food habits never changed. My parents remained vegetarians. We remained vegetarians. And not even egg. So that was very particular. And my grandmother, who was a widow, she became a widow early on in her life. She used to handle the kitchen. And no garlic and no onion in her kitchen. Of course, after it came to my mother, she was open to it. Because she was raising a huge family, a large family, right? And rooted in Ayurveda, my family always believed that food was medicine. And quite fortunately, she passed on that to us, I would say, and all of us siblings are very, very conscious in that sense. So vegetarianism remained. The puja mandir remained, and Panchangam was followed. The Panchang was followed in our home, the lunar calendar, and except for official purposes, that remained. So this is interesting. I'm just taking a pause from what I'm saying about my family experience. But generally speaking, Christians to this day in India, I would say they're confused. They are confused a lot. They cannot get rid of their practices, Hindu practices. They are so afraid to go ahead and schedule a wedding without looking at the panchang, without looking at a tithi. They cannot completely abandon their Hindu practices out of fear. So they still hang on to that auspicious date thing. They still hang on to the Vastu thing. Some of their wedding rituals are so, except for there is no bindi, everything else is same. There is no haldi and kumkum, but everything else is same. So I don't really understand the conversion process. So coming back to my family, it wasn't a huge change at once while my parents were still there. In fact, my mother wore her bindi for a very, very long time. Initially, it was for my grandmother, for her mother. She said, my mother can never see me without a bindi. So I'm going to continue wearing it. And my mother would argue with the pastors, show me where in the Bible it says not to wear the bindi. So the pastors could not. So she continued. She said, if God had said it in the Bible, well, of course, by now it was God's word. So if God had said in the Bible not to wear a bindi, I will remove it. And I'm not very proud of what I'm about to say, but it was I who pressured my mother to remove her bindi at a time when my father was in the hospital, and she called me crying when the doctors gave up. He was in the ICU. I was in Hyderabad. They were in Visakhapatnam at that time. And I told her, maybe God wants to draw you much closer than you already are. So maybe that bindi is a barrier between you and him. So maybe you should remove the bindi and pray for her. And as I said, by now I was a devout Hindu, a fanatic, a blind, Christian, a blind Christian in that. So it was I who pressured my mother to remove the bindi. But until then, and this was early 2000s, and until that point, she had her bindi on. She never removed it. So not much changes, I would say. These events in churches, okay, they used to attend the events in churches where there's a lot of food, lot of meat, lot of non-vegetarian food, right? So my parents would always leave as soon as the prayer started and before the food was served, before the food even came out. And somehow the pastors respected that. I would say at that point, at least to my family, they were respectful. So they never pressured my family, my parents, especially to eat non-veg or partake in those events and all that. So that part, I think we were lucky there. Not all families are as lucky because they're definitely pressured to follow what other Christians do, even if they are vegetarians, especially in villages where Hindus, the new converts, do not have a powerful voice, a strong voice. But where my parents were coming from, the pastors were certainly, my parents pushed back, and the pastors would not pressure my family to do anything against their will. So not much changes in that sense. But yes, one change was my father had to remove his Janev, and my mother had to stop her vrat, worship of her Devi Devdas. That part was taken away from.
I guess I do want to ask you about whether you were discouraged to interact with your Hindu friends, or Secondly, do you feel that as children, like you, I think, brought out one example, that the second generation gets more influenced? The children get more indoctrinated during the conversion process than the first generation. And I think that is a sort of a slow targeting that is definitely, part of their process. So do you agree with that?
Totally. The second generation is definitely indoctrinated much more than the first generation. The first generation is transitioning, but the second generation is almost raised in it. So they get to go to the Sunday school, they get to go to the youth. So they go through all the phases of a Christian life, especially in my case. So it was early on in my life that my parents exposed our family to Christianity. So I didn't miss any of those phases except for Sunday school phase. So the Sunday school phase is 0 to 13 years. That's when, so the church is a pretty tight organization. It's a tight corporation, I would say. It's a family corporation. So where the people that are targeted are families, not just individuals. So my siblings are still devout Christians, very, very devout, not very happy with what I do, what I'm doing, what I say. So yes, to answer your question, the second generation is definitely more indoctrinated. And that is what happened in my case. Luring a teenager is much more easier for pastors than it is for, than luring grown-ups, people that are on the other side of 30s and 40s. The reason is teenagers are always looking for belonging, right? And they're looking to make their identity, separate identity from their family, from their siblings. So every teenager goes through this regardless of the culture. So I was in that stage. I was in that age for these pastors and the telco engineer and his wife who used to make those bi-monthly or quarterly visits to our family all the way from Chennai. He's a Tamilian. All the way from Chennai, they used to spend about 15, 20 days in our home, and they would organize these prayer sessions. And in fact, I would say the Chennai couple outdid the Hyderabad organization, church organization, in pulling us, or at least pulling me into it, deeper into it. So what they used to do is during prayer sessions, they claimed that they had supernatural abilities of prophesying. Prophecy is considered a spiritual gift in Christianity. So they claimed that the woman had the ability to prophecy. Prophecy is uttered in incomprehensible words, I would say. It's not language. It's called tongues in Christian jargon, but it's actually incomprehensible gibberish, I would say. Just put together words. And so she would utter that, and the husband claimed that he had the spiritual ability to translate or interpret her gibberish into English. He used to use English because we didn't speak Tamil, they didn't speak Telugu, so English was our mode of communication. So during the prayer sessions, they used to have our entire family sit there, and she used to utter gibberish and he used to interpret. So after every 4 or 5 words, he would throw in a sentence. He would say a sentence saying that this is what she meant by this. So eyes closed, everybody is in that environment, and she would say this in very charged up tone, emotionally charged tone, and then he would interpret. So during that interpretation, she said that God had a great plan for me, and God wants to give me the spiritual gift of healing. So, and talking in tongues. So, a teenager, right? I'm just 13. To know that I would have the power to heal at my age just by doing this. And what are those things? Go to church, read the Bible, become a Christian, basically. So if I just became a Christian, I would get this power of healing people. I just have to touch. I'm sure you may have watched all those videos on YouTube where Christians are organizing these large prayer meetings where they touch and people just fall back. And when they get up, they're just healed. So, of course, back then there were no videos to reference what they are saying, but this used to happen in the church that I used to go to. This was a Pentecostal church. This is a different denomination. It's an evangelical denomination of Christianity, which believes in all the spiritual gifts and healing just by touch and all that. So I used to go to church and I used to see that. And of course, I wanted to become somebody like the pastor that used to do those things as a teenager. So that is what got me. That is how they got me, I would say.
So it feels like there is a whole playbook of tactics on how to approach people, how to keep their interest going, how to play to their vulnerabilities, and how to sort of bring them into the fold slowly but surely. In a way, I mean, it's a very organized. It feels like a very organized structure that just finds their victims and goes after them with all they have in their toolbox. So Esther ji, first of all, is Esther did you change your name when you became Christian, or is that your Christian name?
So at the time of baptism, yes, everybody is given a Christian name. A lot of people don't go ahead and make those changes officially because it's a cumbersome process to change your name, right? In any country, India or the US. So I was Kamakshi until I got married. So it was during my marriage that my in-laws suggested that I take on this name Esther, and that's how the wedding certificate, the marriage certificate, everything got changed.
So you eventually came back to Sanatan Dharma, but it took you a long time.
Right.
During that process, did you actively help in proselytizing? And how did you go about doing it? What were you expected to do other than just call yourself a Christian?
So there are two kinds of evangelists. Okay, the career evangelist and the lay evangelist. Every Christian is a lay evangelist, regardless of the age, regardless of where that Christian is situated, like college campus, school campus, neighborhood, just a homemaker, corporation, anywhere. Doesn't matter what occupation, what profession. Every Christian is a lay evangelist with only one goal. If I see a Hindu, if I see a non-Christian, especially a Hindu, they don't go to Muslims. We've seen that. If there is a Hindu that I come in contact with, as a Christian, my first duty is to go talk about the gospel, share the gospel. Gospel is the message of Christianity. Gospel means the good news.
Good news,
so
yeah.
share the gospel message. If the Hindu, my co-worker or my peer in school or college or in the neighborhood, is going through a difficult situation, which every human does, some kind of situation or the other. So it is my duty, my sense of responsibility doubles. My responsibility doubles up to go to that Hindu and immediately talk about how great Jesus is and how the situation that he or she is facing at that moment can all be repaired just by going to church and following Jesus. So it is my responsibility to walk up to a vulnerable Hindu and convert him or her. So every Christian is expected, so was I. There's no telling, nobody tells you, no church tells you that, hey, you as a Christian has to convert so many people. This is your target. It's not said like that, but it's just the environment is such that the entire ecosystem is such that when I go to a church of, say, 5 or 6,000 people attending the church every week, and if I see that my Christian friend has brought a Hindu this week, and then another Hindu next week, another family about 4 or 5 months later. So it becomes there's that unsaid, untold, unimposed pressure on me to bring a Hindu family, right? And then you are said that you're all going to heaven and they're all going to rot in hell for eternity. If you love your Hindu neighbor, this is embedded into the sermons very subtly, very subtle messaging. So if you love your Hindu neighbor, if you love your Hindu relative or your Hindu spouse, your children, you have to save them. You have to convince them to come to church, and the church will do the rest of it. So this is an unwritten expectation of every Christian. And because my family was a trophy to the church, it was a trophy conversion for them. Urban, educated, well placed in society, socially not disadvantaged, financially also not as disadvantaged, middle class family, right? So it was a trophy conversion for them. And this church where we used to go to initially catered to not so advantaged communities, socially and economically. And they would present our family as if, if this family could convert, what is stopping you from converting? If this family, after knowing everything, after having everything in society, what is your problem in converting? You need Jesus more than these people. So that's how they presented my family. And of course, my parents never proselytized anybody, I'm sure, but by sheer model, by their lifestyle change, I would say, people were influenced, definitely, I would say. But to my credit, not very proud of it, actually. I did some conversions too. Yes.
Okay.
It never said that, never told them to abandon their Hindu faith or their deities. But definitely, looking at my life, looking at me, there are definitely people that got influenced and became Christian.
I see. So as you were going through, this phase, did you ever regret, maybe you personally, but maybe perhaps your parents, if they ever talked to you, did they ever regret making that change? And how did you view, your life before you were converted to Christianity during this phase?
So you have two questions in there, Jayaji. One is, did your parents regret? The other is, did I regret? Did I regret? No, not for 25 years.
Okay.
After I quit Christianity, yes, I did regret because I felt I wasted 25 years, invested in a book, in understanding a book that was just false and untrue. I regretted that at that stage, but never during those 25 years. To answer the question, did my parents regret it? I would say yes, very much. My father and I had a very interesting conversation when he was on his deathbed. So I was in the US, he was in India, and I went to see him when my siblings called me to see him the last time. And I was fortunate enough to spend those last days by his bedside 24/7, because I was visiting from the US. I didn't have anything else to do in India. My siblings were busy with their stuff there. So I got to spend most of the time with my father, and he was on oxygen. He had a mask because he had his lungs had collapsed, and he was having difficulty to talk. But we had this profound conversation about which I'm, of course, talking in my book. But to give you a brief idea of what conversation we had was, he had so many questions, like, did I do the right thing? What happened was, as soon as my parents got converted, my father removed his Jenu. Just then, his mother, my paternal grandmother in Vishakhapatnam, she fell sick, and she wanted to see my father one last time, and she kept asking for him. And then a conversation started in my home, where the pastors actually discouraged my father from visiting his mother. And so what happened was, long story short, my father could not go see his mother, and could not pay his, could not attend her last rites. So what the pastor said was, oh, if you go now, they will expect you to perform all the rituals, and sit in the rituals. Of course, my father had an older brother who was to do all that. So without even knowing what they expected my father to do and not do, the pastor just assumed that my father will be forced by his Hindu family to be a part of those rituals, for which he would have to wear his Jenu again, which he had just removed. So then they put that fear in him. Oh, you just became converted. I mean, you are not even eligible for all those things. You have abandoned, being a Hindu, and then this is going to affect your family adversely. They put all that fear, and for a family, parents of such a large family who were already going through a lot of stuff, so that got them, actually. So they didn't want the family to go through any more difficulties than it was already in. So my father could not go, and that, I think, stayed in his mind for a very long time, all his life, in fact, and he never shared it with us. And this conversation that I had with him when he was sick in the hospital, that is when he talked about it. And that is when I realized this person has lived with regret all his life for his decision. So my mother, did she regret? She passed away with Alzheimer's, 4th stage Alzheimer's, in November last year. And she had no clue that she was even Christian, and she converted at one point in her life, the last 7 or 8 years of her life. She forgot all about it. She didn't even know of her own existence, her own identity, nothing. So, but as long as she was fit and fine, I don't think she regretted in the sense that my father regretted, but she definitely missed being a Hindu. I can say that.
What about your attitude towards non-Christians during this phase? What were you thinking? These people are.
Yeah, I think Richaji also asked that question, and I missed answering it. So were we expected to cut off our ties with our Hindu family and friends? No, a big no. In fact, we are expected to keep in touch with those families, see their vulnerable side. I'm making this up, but this is what is expected, actually. So if there is a vulnerable moment in their lives, just go ahead and preach the gospel and try to convert them. So of course we have to keep in touch with them.
But what were you thinking of of them, they're these miserable people who don't believe in the gospel, who don't believe in Christ. Is that what's going through your mind, or it's just, nice people doing their, going about their lives?
I would feel bad for them. They
Hmm.
have no understanding of how great Jesus is, or
Hmm.
what great plans God has for them, the Christian God has for them. And poor souls, they're going to endure torture in eternal hell. So, no, so these people are so resistant. They are being stopped by Satan from getting converted because Satan wouldn't allow to open their minds to the Christian message. So I used to feel very bad for them, for people that were resistant to the gospel message. Like, there were times when I would ask my friends to come go to church with me because there is this event, there's this women's conference, or sometimes this men's or family conference, children's summer camp. So when I would ask them to do that, I think 9 out of 10 times they would agree and go to church with me. But the one family or one individual that would refuse, I would feel bad for that person and I would pray. I would actually pray for that person, asking God to melt the heart, the rigid heart of this Hindu,
Hmm.
and destroy Satan's plans, foil Satan's plans of stopping them from going to church with me. So I
Hmm.
would pray. And to add to that, my siblings continue to pray for me. My Christian friends and Christian side of the family still continue to pray for me
Sure.
to come back to the right track.
Right track. Yeah, you were, I'm sure you had Hindu, social friends, your personal, friends from, school and college and all that. Uh, uh, how were you received? How was the conversion received in that, in that circle?
My Hindu circle,
Yes.
Hindus are tolerant. We are talking about Hindus, Jaji. Hindus are not just tolerant, they're respectful, willingly respectful with all their heart. So my Hindu family, my cousins and cousins that I grew up with, that my parents basically adopted and raised them and settled them. So my mother's side of the family was very welcoming. Like I said, my aunts, they never objected to the pastors coming and praying. And this was their own, one of their own, becoming a Christian. They were they did not reject us. So we would continue to be part of their pujas and their festivals. They would invite us during Sankranti to go, partake in their celebrations, Diwali, even Ganesh, Ganesh Puja and Navratri, all these things. So um, even to this day, my siblings still would go to my cousins' homes to be part of this, but their only request is not to serve them prasad. Prasad. So to answer your question, my Hindu uh, family, extended family, was very, very respectful. In fact, they would come and sit in the prayer meeting that used to take place in our home. After they got married and left, they would come back to attend the prayer meetings.
Yeah, lot of questions still have, but I think time to pass on to Richaji.
Yes. I think we need to discuss the homecoming as to what made you come back. But before that, I do want to ask you a very quick question on, you talked about some of the, fear factors that they instill in you, that, you shouldn't pray to any other god. But what do they say when they say, you shouldn't you have to remove your jnu, you have to do this. Like, what kind of fear do they instill? And what are there any sops given to the people to, when they have converted? Are there some advantages that they promise or they give? But then, of course, we want to talk about your homecoming and how did you feel interested in coming back? Because I think you mentioned you're married to a Christian because you changed your name to Esther. So, like that, does your family still practice Christianity? I think that's a question if you may want to answer.
Yeah, I have answered it on so many platforms. There's nothing from my Christian life that is a secret anymore, because the reason I put all that out there is, I mean, before I answer your question, the reason I put it all out there is there's so much of learning to do from just my family's Christian conversion experience. So if any of these details could help any family from getting converted, I would think it was all worth it putting my personal life out there for public scrutiny, so to say. So, Rishaji, you asked a lot of questions that the answer would actually span 25 years of my Christian life. So, I'm not sure if I remember all the questions. You can always go back to the questions. Can we repeat the questions?
I think one of my questions is, what are the sops they offer? I mean, there are some fear factors, right?
Yeah.
But what are the sops they offer?
The people say that, I mean, a lot of people that don't know what conversion entails, there is a term called rice bag converts that has been developed in recent years, right? So I have asked this question many times, that if a Hindu, a devout Hindu, like my father, like my parents, if, as it is claimed, they converted for a rice bag, if they rice bag, what stops the Hindu individuals in the neighborhood or relatives or friends to retain that Hindu person in Hinduism by giving the same rice bag? It's just a rice bag, right? If a rice bag can convert somebody to Christianity, it can also retain somebody in their faith, in their Hindu faith. The point I'm trying to make is, it is not just a rice bag. There's so much more going on. So, first of all, the family is isolated, okay? And then there are all these predators. I would call them predators because their practices are predatory. I will come to that in a bit and detail, like, what are their tactics. But they are surrounded by predators. There is constant pressure on the family. And when the family is isolated, the parents are already, the family is already going through so much that they're trying to figure out, I have been doing so many pujas, I've been doing so many rats, but how come I'm in this situation, right? That comes down to the lack of understanding of why we do rituals, what is the purpose of these rituals, are these to see miracles in our life? So the whole understanding is, if you pray to God, you get healed. If you pray to God, money is going to come to you. Pray to God, you're going to get that job or pass that exam. That is the understanding that has been passed on to us. Well, of course, looking at religion through the Western lens, through the Christian lens, that is the understanding we have had of Hinduism. So when a devout Hindu family is going through a difficult situation in life, the bigger questions come in the mind. And the pastors add fuel to fire. They say that, well, you have been doing so many pujas, so many rats. Look at your puja mandir. You have all the deities in there, but no deity came to your rescue. So it's the Christian God who came to your rescue. Because by then, the family started going to the church. The family sees that there is so much belonging. all the Christians come to you as a new convert. When you go into the church, every Christian member from that church comes and makes it a point to talk to you, come and talk to you. They say, oh, sister, we've heard about your story. It's so nice you've come to us. Look, just wait, give it some time, and Jesus is going to, relieve you of all your situations. He's going to come to your rescue. And then during the week also, between Sunday and Sunday, in those days, there are some Christian families that come to visit you. There is a weekly prayer that the church comes and does. So they tell you all these things that you want to hear in that situation. So it's not just about that rice bag. It's not just about monetary help. It's not even the miracle. Sometimes, when a family has converted because of the ill health of their family member, the family member might die too, but the family will remain Christian. The family at that point does not question why, in spite of my conversion, why did my loved one die? What is the reason for that? Because this family is never for a moment left alone. The church is always there. The people are always there. That is how strong their ecosystem is. Regardless of who brings a new convert to the church, the entire church gets on board in retaining that person a Christian, regardless of what the situation, regardless of whether the situation has changed or not. You have to commend their ecosystem in this. So the fear, I've already talked about it. You will go to hell. Of all the people, God chose you. You are so lucky. So of the billions of people on this, at least 1.2 billion Hindus, God chose your family. So you are real. He has a great plan for you, and this was predestined. So there's something called predestination. Even before the foundations of the earth were laid, God had a plan for everybody, all the unborn. So yet to be born, I should say. So God had a plan for you, which is why out of all your relatives, He chose you. You are going to heaven. So this kind of luring is there. So again, it's not just about a rice bag.
One rice bag, yeah. But I want to ask you, I guess, about the homecoming, because that's a rare occurrence also. And thank you for talking about it. What was it that prompted you, and especially after having a name change after your marriage? Please tell us about that.
What changed me? So again, it was not, I went to bed a Christian and woke up a Hindu. It was not like that. So after I quit Christianity, that's another interesting reason there why I quit Christianity. After I quit, it was not, I explored in the West. I was in the West. I was in the US when I actually decided that Christianity is not for me, and it is not what I was taught it was. The first worldview that a person who has left Christianity looks towards is atheism. So I read a lot of books on atheism written by former Christians. And then atheism did not answer so many questions. We all know it doesn't answer all the questions. And then I came to a place where I said, okay, there must be some higher power. I just don't know who it is. So I'm not going to reject the existence of a higher power. So that made me an agnostic. So from Christian to atheism to agnostic. Agnosticism also did not fit right. And of course, there's that DNA, right? The Hindu DNA. For a person for a non-Hindu person, atheism and agnosticism are the only worldviews, right? And then I started reading literature about, started exploring Hinduism a little bit. Of course, I always knew that Hinduism is the oldest civilization, and it definitely had value. I mean, whatever our ancients, our sages, our rishis and munis said, must have some value to it. I always respected that fact, never went too far away from that aspect. So that was there in me. The make was Hindu, right? So at the core, I'm still a Hindu. So it was natural for me to get inclined or even open my mind to exploring Hinduism. And I told myself that the reason I quit Christianity is because I asked questions. I started asking questions, which was forbidden as a Christian. And because I asked questions, because I opened my mind to ask questions, I kept my mind open to explore other worldviews and see for what they were and take the value that they offered. So after agnosticism, my stop was with Hinduism. And I started reading literature on that, started exploring about it. And one concept that actually drew me towards Hinduism was karma. As a Christian, there is no karma. There is no past life, right? There is no life. There are no lives. There's only just one life, and this is the only planet that has life. God chose this planet, made people on this, and there's only one life and only one chance. Either you go to heaven or hell, and your actions don't take you to the heaven or hell. Only your faith in Jesus or your lack of faith in Jesus will decide where you go after death. So your actions have no bearing on where you go, where you spend your eternity. So action has got nothing to do with it. In fact, there is even a verse in the Bible which says that your good deeds, your righteous deeds are like filthy rags to me. They don't mean anything to me. That's what God says. I mean, it is said through an apostle called Paul. I don't want Christians jumping up on me saying that, oh, God never said this. You don't even know your Bible. So let me make it clear that it has been said, it has been attributed to a person called Paul, where he says your righteous deeds are like filthy rags to God. So what he means is, it doesn't matter how righteous you are, what a great righteous life you live, you still go to hell if you just don't become a Christian and follow Jesus. So actions, karma, have got no bearing on where you go after life, in your afterlife. So coming to understanding karma actually drew me to Hinduism. And the more I'm still a learner, I can't say I have learned anything at all. But karma is something that hooked me onto it. Then I understood what Dharma is. Still understanding, I can't say I understood, trying to understand. So these are the two concepts that really answer a lot of questions that I always had, even as a Christian.
Yes. What kind of resistance did you face, like from the church, from your family, or any resistance that you had to face? Because I think it's a very challenging time. How did you feel at that time as well?
The church couldn't do anything. Well, it's my life. It's my decision. Church is not very happy with what I did, especially when I left India. I used to go to a church. I left India as a Christian and went back to India, criticizing Christianity publicly. So these are two different things, right? The church that I left had about 10,000 in attendance every week. It's called Mega Church. When they heard that I joined a seminary, I did join a seminary, which I didn't talk about in this talk, but that's how I quit Christianity after going to the seminary. So when I went to the seminary, my church was very happy. My pastor was very happy that, I would further the work of Christianity and bring in more numbers, more Hindus. But when they learned that I quit Christianity, they were not very happy, but they can't do anything. It's not their decision. So I'm not bound by the church, right? It's my life, it's my decision. But as for the family, two sides of the family. My husband, I married a Christian, a third generation Christian, but fortunately for me, he never believed in any of the crap that Christianity promoted. So he early on in his Christian life, he started asking the questions that I asked 25 years after 25 years of practicing Christianity. So he asked those questions early on in his Christian life. It never made sense to him. Even the very first chapter of the Bible never made any sense to him, which says that the universe was created in 6 literal days, just 6,000 years ago. And there was a talking snake that God allowed into his creation that disrupted his whole plan. So this is a creation story. I'm not sure if your audiences know that story, but I think this should be for another day. The doctrines of Christianity, the absurdity of the doctrines of Christianity. So the original sin that Christianity talks about never made any sense to my husband. And the original sin came into the world through this talking snake that God had allowed to creep into his beautiful creation. So that made my husband ask, if the creation was so beautiful and God had everything in control, how did the disruptor, snake, creep into the garden, into his creation and disrupted his entire plan for mankind? So these were some of the questions that he asked, and he rejected Christianity early on. But just because he was born in a Christian home and raised a Christian, raised in the church, he went to church every Sunday. Initially was taken to church by his parents, and later on that became a habit to him. And he was even the youth director to a very big church, Christian church, organized several events for Christianity, but never himself believed in the doctrines or in the teachings of Christianity. Never believed that Jesus could be the only God, never believed that Jesus had the power to take people to heaven, nothing of that. So that was where I was fortunate. My only grudge to my husband was, how did he allow me to continue for 25 years in a path that he himself did not believe in? Why did he not ever bring that conversation between us that Jesus may not be a God at all? So why did he just stay quiet and not stop me from being this fanatic fundamentalist Christian for 25 precious years? But his answer was, he said, well, you're not doing anything wrong if it brought peace to you. So who am I to deny that or discourage you from going in that direction? And of course, he was a Christian, right? So at that point, Christianity is a point of no return, which is why a lot of people think that, mine is a unique journey, or they find my journey interesting, the U-turn or the 180-degree turn that I took. They say it's rare, but there are a lot of Christians that have left their Christian faith, closeted, don't like to come out of so many reasons, targeted by the church, targeted by the family. But luckily for me, it's karma again, right? Maybe I have some great karma, prarabdha, which is why I'm here today. So,
yes. It's rare, like you said, it's rare for homecoming and you're coming back to your roots. It's a rare process, and I think that's why we need to inoculate our kids, and also to try to be the adversarial. I mean, is there a need to inoculate? Do we need to keep our kids Hindu or our families Hindu? Why do you think we need to, first of all, and secondly, what are the ways that we can do that?
Yes, yes. Rishaji, you asked to complete what I started, and to answer your question completely. So what about the rest of the family? My side of the family, my siblings are still upset. My husband's side of the family, my husband stands like a buffer between both of us, like that dhal in Hindi, what you say, dhal. So they don't bother me. Of course, they're not happy with it. I know. I've greatly disappointed them. Somebody who they thought to be somebody who guided them in their Christian life, that's me. So helped them understand, interpret the Bible, and prayed with them, prayed for them, taught many of them how to pray. Somebody like that quitting Christianity and talking about it publicly is disappointing, right? So I understand where they're coming from, but we don't bother each other. We don't cross each other's lines. We occasionally say hi, hello, wish for, greet each other for occasions, wedding anniversaries, birthdays. That's about it. So they don't know what's in my mind about them. I don't know what's in their mind about me. And I would say that's a good place to be in. And thanks to my husband for that. And yes, Hindu parents. I have a lot to say about it, but I will begin with what I call Shatru Bodh. I have always talked about this on platforms. As Hindu parents, they think that educating their children in Shastra alone is enough. So they take their kids to the temples and expose them to the Bhagavad Gita, make them memorize the shlokas, and then these kids get up on the stage, recite those shlokas, and the parents are happy, very proud, did their Hindu job. Done deal. Not so. Shastra Bodh is one thing which is important, but alongside Shastra Bodh, there has to be Shatru Bodh. Now, why I call this Shatru is Christian conversion is not just replacing the deity in your puja mandir. We have seen in several instances how the church is very much against, it opposes development in an area. Like the Sterlite project. I won't go into the details. I mean, for the benefit of your audience, you can always go ahead and Google it. The Sterlite project, it was opposed by by the church. So why does the church in India oppose development projects? Because it wants the rural people to stay rural, the economically disadvantaged people to stay economically disadvantaged, so they can convert. They can convert them to Christianity. They can lure them through these, these freebies, which is not actually freebie. So they do not want development. So conversion to Christianity is not just replacing of your Shiva with Jesus or Krishna with Jesus. No, it's more than that. So now Christianity can be also seen as a threat to national security in terms of our Northeast, the Northeast region becoming Christian, border states like Punjab becoming Christian. So it is also a threat to national security. Again, this is another talk that I have, I think, given on other platforms where I said conversion is not just about changing faith in a deity. There's so much more to that. So, so much parents should educate the children on these things. Then there is a culture annihilation. So you're completely asked to change your culture. If you go into rural India that has been converted, clusters of villages that are converted, they wear a dead look. I mean, there's so much of, the word that comes to my mind is morbid. So that the once these villages were beaming with energy and so much of Hindu identity to it. There's rangoli in front of every home. And then there are mango leaves hanging from every doorway, entrance door. They wear flowers for festivals. During festival time, it's so much of high energy, very both positive and celebratory environment. None of that is there. In fact, women wear white because Pentecostalism promotes no jewelry, just white clothes. Women wear white, no bindis, no flowers. I mean, it wears a dead look to me. Widowed villages, that's what I call them. So, culture is taken away from them, right? So it's not just about changing the deity. Why can't I be a Christian, worship Jesus with this identity? Like my mom asked, where in the Bible does it say that I should abandon my kumkum and my bindi? So where in the Bible does it say that I should abandon color? Why white? So this doesn't happen in the US. I've gone to a Pentecostal church in the US also. Brilliant colors that they wear, the women wear, they're always in some red or electric blue, beautiful ocean greens. So why is that color missing in India alone? Because that is a deliberate effort, deliberate tactic to remove everything Hindu from the convert. So annihilation of culture. Then hating Hinduism. So Christianity is not just about embracing Christianity and abandoning Hinduism. It's also hating Hinduism, hating nationalism. You have to hate your nation. There have been instances where Christian pastors have told their congregations not to bow down to our tricolor, to our tiranga, because it's just a piece of cloth or it's just a colored paper. So your allegiance is to the flag of Jesus, not to the flag of India. And then there is another pastor who comes out and says that how many husbands does Bharat Mata have? Hindus always do Bharat Mata, Bharat Mata. Bharat Mata ke kitne bhratra hai? Bharta is the word for husband in Telugu. So this is a Telugu pastor. He says Bharta Mata jo bolte hain. I mean, he can't even say the word Bharat. Can you beat that? So ये जो भर्त माता करते रहते हैं, इनके कितने भर्ता है, मतलब कितने husbands है?
Sure.
So this is what they say. And there is another pastor from Chennai, I think he says, just like India got divided one time on the basis of Hindu Muslim, why don't they divide it one more time? So there is divisive ideas that are put in Christians' minds.
Yeah.
So these are some of the things parents should really educate their children about. So there will be no idea of Bharat if Christian conversions continue like how they are now, and there will be no identity called Hindu if this goes on.
I think we are way past the hour, and yet there are still a lot of questions that are swirling through my head, and I'm sure we're going to have to have another session at some point down the road. So let me just first of all thank you for taking the time and sharing not just your thoughts but your whole personal life. Not very many people are willing to do so publicly, but thank you for doing that. It's you're doing a great public service for the Hindu community at large. But just coming back to Richaji's earlier question, why what's wrong with Christianity? I mean, and I think you answered it in so many ways, but I just look at the expanse of history, and the only word that comes to mind is ethnocidal. Wherever Christianity has gone, the ethnicity, the culture of that particular society has been completely wiped out. They talk so in such glorious terms about the Greek culture and all that, the giver of democracy, giver of philosophy and all that. But first they had to kill it and put it in the museums before it becomes not threatening, so they can now start praising it. uh, Look at the native culture in Americas.
True.
It's So anyway, those are questions or issues that we need to probe at some point in time, but perhaps not today. So let me just close on once again by thanking you and inviting you to a future conversation of this type whenever that may occur.
Yeah, definitely look forward to it, Jaiji. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you. Thank you
Richa
so much.
and Jaiji, for inviting me.